Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. I'm here with Peter Hooymans.
Steve-O, how are you?
I'm very well.
Excellent.
Today we're going to be talking about some influences on real estate careers, the major influence, the people that have had an impact.
That's it. There's many.
You've been in the game longer than me, Pete.
I have a bit, yeah. So we should, there's so many, but there's profound ones. So we'll zip through them as best we can. So why don't I start with, because for me it's a really easy start. Maybe it was mid-90s, selling houses with a good old mate of mine, Paul Fennick, and we would trundle off up to Sydney and see the great John McGrath when ARAC started back then. And I cannot remember which year it was, somewhere in the 90s. And we would sort of have a couple of beers at night and then we'd get up and go and sit there all day taking notes. And John was so far ahead of his time. It's just not funny. He was at the time traveling the world, going to see, what's the best in London, what's the best in New York, who are the best agents. And he just had this incredible drive to be the absolute best agent.
It's a bit like the AFL coaches now. Do you know what I mean? They go over to the US to
a bit of group study.
Yeah.
You got to remember, this is, pre-iPhone, pre-email almost. So, yeah. So for me, it's single-handedly, there was a point in time, for I reckon a decade, I used to say, people say, who do you think the best agent is? And I just say, mate, there's only one. John McGrath is so far ahead of anyone else in this country. It's not even funny. I still think that today. And I probably at a point also said globally, he's the best agent in the world. But I reckon Ryan Serhant at the moment might just have an edge just because of the global reach. But Johnny still is an absolute legend. We'll move on to some of the other awesome influences that have been the case for me. Also, a little bit as a subset of John and interactions with, listening to John's training. But what about you?
Well, I look back to my childhood because the thing that I look at is, when did I decide to be a real estate agent? And the honest truth of that was
last year.
No, well, I don't know if I still am, but the honest truth of that was when I was about 9.
Yeah.
And I'd sit there, this is pretty geeky, but I'd sit there and I'd call fake auctions, looking at the Waverley Gazette and looking at all the little photos of the houses advertised in there. And the influence on that was my grandma.
Yeah.
Because she used to buy investment properties.
Yeah, right.
And so then I was sort of like watching her. She'd sell one and she'd tell me about it. And then we'd go on from that pathway. So I have to throw her in it, but she's not overly well known and deceased now for 27 years. So that not much more of the conversation with her. But if I move forward to working at MRE and the influence from that side, I think the first thing that I really came into contact with when we started, the first game changer and the first thing that impacted me was the software that was created by Little. It was Run Property software originally, and then it moved across to Little, and then it was called Agent Plus, and then Colmio.
So Agent Plus, I think we were introduced to Agent Plus by Chris Rolls. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right. So 2010. Yeah, 2010, I reckon. Yeah. And so we looked at that, and I think that the game changer for me was that it was the most scalable software in the marketplace.
Yeah, which it was.
And that's what sort of opened my eyes to the requirement for scalability. So
that was really the two reasons we took it on was because it was scalable, and number two, because it had an app.
Yes.
Which 15 years ago, an app was cool.
Game changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was a bloke there who pretty much designed that, Simon Beach. He was a clever cat. And created a piece of software that was delivering wasn't the easiest thing to use initially, but once you got your head around it, it was close. Well, it was the best software that was in the market.
Yeah.
So that learning that and understanding that had an impact on the way I thought. And
so
I think
then we then have a mutual. I'm not going to call it crush because he's not that good a looking bloke, but
no, I wouldn't do that.
No, but Chris Rolls was, if he was very formative for us,
hugely
or transformative, whatever you want to say. Back in the day when we were 700 or 800, and then he taught us his, what was it called? Rollsy's
rule of attrition.
Ceiling. What's it called?
Rollsy's rule of attrition.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, I still train kids.
Rollsy's rule of attrition.
Yeah,
Rollsy's glass ceiling. He also taught us the value of net promoter score.
Yes.
So we were lucky enough. I'm pretty sure we met Chris at ARAC. I'm going to say, so again, another McGrath influence. So it might be 08, 09. And he ran that, like that course.
Yeah, the growth something.
Yeah.
The growth
and it was like $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
It was cheap as chips. Because I remember asking, I said, "Are you making any money out of that?" He said, "No, not really." And it was $1,000 a month, and it was us. It was a bunch of other agents, maybe 6 different agencies, non-competing. It had to be non-competing, and we'd go up to Brisbane every month for the day.
And then Adelaide. Remember we went to Adelaide?
Yeah, we go around the place. Yeah. And we learned a lot from that.
Heaps. Because we were talking with people like back then we had, I don't know, so not many, and there were other people in the room with 1,000, other people in the room with volume like that. Putting on properties, losing properties, looking at the
we've had him to advisors a couple of times.
Yeah,
yeah, many moons ago. He's a good fella, Chris. So Rollsy's got to be up there.
Yes, without a doubt, a doubt. He's got smart ideas on a lot of different things.
Who else for you?
I think the other big one for me, if I look at it, is probably just the way that we use video and the way that that's impacted the business.
When did that happen?
2012.
Another McGrath.
Yeah. No, I think it was Arpham or something like that. It might have been a different one.
Well, that was sort of still, was that Blaine's?
Yeah, but maybe Blaine's.
Fiona Blaney.
Yeah.
There's another legend.
Got to call you this afternoon, Fiona.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah. So that's that, and that's a great lead on to that. So we'll talk first about the video. Was Todd Breen. He's a superstar.
Who's based in Florida? Just for those listening.
Yeah, based in Florida. Real estate agent by trade, but then he's expanded out into all sorts of smart tech, and the use of video was at the forefront of that. But then also outsourcing. It's a whole range of futuristic views on real estate and how tech can assist and resourcing can be resolved in that way. And so he had, like when we started using video for marketing of rental properties, condition reports, routine inspections, etc., it changes the way that you interact with your client.
Yeah.
And it brings back that personable approach rather than a report with a few photos. You've got a video and you're speaking to your client through a video. So it's a completely different way of doing it.
Toddy Breen, thank you for forcing us in a way to, I think it was our YouTube channel. 212, 210?
212. May 2012.
Gee, that's gone quick.
Yeah.
So a fella I met once again at a McGrath conference, and it was at the Sheraton, Port Douglas. Can't remember the year, actually. And his name was Peter Rawlings. Pete was managing director of Foxtons at the time. And the room was about 100 people who were all serious players of probably some of Australia's most serious businesses now, Marshall White and Jealous Craig and all the big players, McGrath Network as well. And I remember Pete did his talk for, it was a couple of hours at least. I think he did 2 sessions and he got a standing ovation at the end. And I remember it well because John had actually come down with a really bad flu. And he was actually lying under whoever's mixing the set was actually lying under the table, like just in a coma. He was.
He was that crook.
He was that crook, but he was that determined not to miss hearing Peter, and I know why now. And we just don't have the time today to go into the things that I learned from listening to that man. He's an incredible guy.
And he was Foxtons, yeah?
Say again?
Foxtons.
He was the managing director of Foxtons at the time, but subsequently went on to purchase Marsh & Parsons in the UK, grow that to an extraordinary on an extraordinary trajectory, and sold that to an insurance company, I would say about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So his ideas, he was so far in front of the of what was going on, and I was listening to that back 20 years ago, which brings me to another influence who I think is, I call John the best agent in Australia. Who's the best female agent? Sarah Hackett.
Okay.
Superstar. And Sarah was actually at the same. I remember I met Sarah at the same conference in Port Douglas at the time we met Peter Rawlings.
Yeah. And
her and her husband Damien have gone on to build Place estate agents up in Queensland, and they absolutely kill it. And she's a superstar. And for anyone listening, if you want to know how it's done, check out Sarah's.
That's the one.
Yeah, online, number one by a mile. I don't think anybody female, male, whatever you like, top 3 in this country for me. So other influences, Barbara Corcoran. I posted that on our intranet the other day. Barbara was another person I got to meet, a bit like Pete Rawlings. It was an international that John had brought in to speak.
Yep.
So after listening
even
to
that idea is a bit revolutionary.
Oh, mate, he was bringing in people back in the day that were $100,000 type of thing to talk. And the one that I remember who I'm pretty sure was that sort of cost was Tom Peters.
Right.
So, I've gone to three of John's. I've met Peter Rawlings, Barbara Corcoran,
Tom Peters,
one of the greatest business authors and greatest business thinkers in the modern history, Tom Peters, and the guy standing next to me and can you sign my book? Yeah, sure, mate. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I still read the books, the blogs, Tom, even though he'd now be in his 70s, probably maybe late 70s, he's still an avid
writer.
He's right, and he still punches out heaps of content, and I watch quite a bit of it. Yeah, it's really, he's, again, as always, he's a futurist. He's saying things that are going to happen,
There's a common gem with these being futurists, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's
pretty forward thinkers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like MRE's always been sort of like the earlier adopter of these type of things, but you've got to be exposed to the ideas and then implement them.
So this morning I had found a box of notes from real estate bits and bobs training. I'm going to mention two other guys who have extraordinary careers and but who's have been really generous in sharing their information and helping people. The first one is Chris Hanley.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris is up in Byron Bay. I'm not sure where he's at the moment, but I remember back in the day, we're talking 2007, and his talk that he gave on culture and the importance of culture in a business was a game changer for me.
Still stuck in your brain.
And his business was an amazing business. I'm pretty sure it still is an amazing business. And the other one, who I'm a massive fan of, is the big fella, Matty Steinwade, who's absolutely dominates the North Coast. McGrath, number one, number two, who cares? In my eyes, he's always number one. The story is amazing. He's got, I think, 140 staff. Just kills it. And he does a weekly podcast actually called 31 Minutes, which comes out on a Friday.
Does it go for 31 minutes?
He tries to keep to 31 minutes, but he's a bit like us. He kind of rambles on. Well, not really. I shouldn't say that. Respectfully, he doesn't like to finish if he hasn't got to his point. So some of them are 29 minutes and quite a few of them are 53.
There you go.
But I don't care. I listen to all of them.
Yeah.
So that is a snapshot. And bearing in mind we are trying to keep this one nice and neat, that's a snapshot of definitely the main influences for me.
Yeah.
And interestingly, all still heaps of current content from all those guys and girls that you can look at, watch,
online,
read.
Yeah.
Matt's got
podcast.
2 books. Matt's got a couple of books out. Sarah, just have a look at Sarah online and look at what she's doing. It's nuts. Pete, you'd have to Google because I think Pete's retired into the sunset, but that's okay. And John's active, and we'll see the great man on stage when we get to Arac in May this year.
Perfect. Hope you get something from it.
We will. I think we're taking. I think we've got at this stage 45 of the group of our crew going. Before we go, I know I've done all the talking here, but I wanted to get them out. Anyone else for you that?
No one jumping off the page. I look at during the infancy of my career. I looked at Hocking Stewart as an aspirational model. When I was in 2000
he was pretty good in his day, Greg.
Yeah. And I was sort of like that was a I think it was a bold franchising thing that just spread across Melbourne. It was like there was red everywhere.
I'm not sure. Did they have 100 offices?
I don't know. Like I went overseas during their domination, so I was sort of away. But I remember seeing them and putting them on a pole.
Yeah, they were one of the first.
And they had pre-listing kits and all of that sort of stuff.
25 years ago.
Yeah. Other agencies hadn't sort of thought of. So
no, they hadn't got there.
That
John had.
But again, here we are.
They probably copied it off John.
Probably.
But we've copied heaps off John too. So he doesn't.
Let's not mention that.
It's all about sharing, caring.
Sure. Well, no one implements.
Yeah.
I think that's what he said.
Is that a wrap?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, good. Thanks to the influencers. See you.